Hello again, it's Bony Tony here, and today I am going to talk about life and death. Yes, should be some laughs. So, first of all, what is life? Well, I suppose it is where an object can recreate itself. There may be some inanimate versions of that, but not really. What I mean is, like, it has DNA, proteins, and what have you, and they combine and recombine. They refresh themselves while the life form is alive, and that's what they do. And they are capable of duplicating or procreating to create another version of themselves, and that is true from the cellular level up to the human level, and who knows, maybe beyond on different planets if there are superior life forms, which there probably are. Now, and the DNA and the structure of the proteins is more or less the same in all life forms, pretty much. I mean, the fly has a very similar structure, a DNA structure to humans, and of course a chimpanzee has almost an identical structure to humans. So now what interests me is that what is human life? Is it we know what we mean by it, but what actually is it? Is it just one human like moi and toi, or is it? It could also be each individual cell within the body, because each cell is alive, it's a life form. Life starts off at the cellular level in its simplest forms, and then basically humans and other animals are just a collection of these individual cells that live and die and reproduce. So are we a collection of life forms, or are we us? Well, it's both, I suppose, but technically, I think we're actually we're a collection of multiple life forms that are all stuck together, basically, aren't we? How many cells are there in the human body? I don't know, loads. How much, therefore, if we're not just one life form, a human, but made up of many life forms, how much, therefore, are we actually in control of our so-called life? Or is it just the lives of our cells? I mean, if our cells all die, we all die, right? So, and if they don't do their job, we wouldn't live. We wouldn't be able to live. And also, of course, like, we don't control what our body does. It just regulates itself. That's because it is alive in its, of its own right, regardless of our consciousness. I mean, when we're asleep, we should stop breathing, right? But we don't, because that's regulated by these amazing cells and organs of the body, which are made up of specialist cells. So I can't read through these glasses, hang on. Yes, so now I wanted to go on to so life does not have to have consciousness. For instance, a fly works on instinct, doesn't it? It doesn't have thoughts, at least we don't believe it does, about what it's going to do. We do, but that doesn't make a fly any less alive than us. It just means we've got more developed brain cells, that's all. So we think about things and we invent concepts like life and death. Right. I thought it might be interesting to talk about whether it would be worth having everlasting life or prolonged life if we could achieve it. Now, before answering that, I think I want to say, like, what is life? What is consciousness like? And how much control can we exert over what we do in our lives? Well, I suppose, like, one way of answering that would be to seek pleasure, or at least a neutral state where there's no actual pleasure, and avoid pain. So, and achieve a kind of overall balanced sort of happiness and contentment, or at least security and stability. That's fine. Now, in contrast, you don't feel any of those things when you're dead. And what will death be like when all your cells stop working and they just kind of go away and to be recycled into other life forms or inanimate matter in innumerable combinations? What will death be like? Well, we won't no, because we won't have any consciousness or even life, because our cells are no longer joined together to form us, or they're no longer functioning in that way, and our bodies will just deteriorate, and all the atoms will go elsewhere and be recycled into either other animate or, in the main, inanimate objects. Now, you may remember, or actually you won't remember, you can now, as a conscious being, think back, as it were, to what it was like before you were alive, to know what it was like to be dead. Like there were many, many millions and billions of years, weren't there, which I was going to say they passed in an instant. You didn't wait there waiting to be born, thinking, God, this is boring. How many more millions of years is it going to be before somebody gives birth to me or whatever? We didn't think that, did we? Because we couldn't think, because we didn't have a body or a brain or any cells as part of our body. They were all in different places doing different things at that time, because atoms and molecules and what have you are matter. They're not necessarily alive, but they can be the building blocks of life or inanimate objects. And initially, when the universe formed, there were no living objects, or so we think, or so people tell me. So and the same will be true then when our body decays and stops working and stops being a life form. It'll just become an inanimate object which will decay. That's what it will be like. So we won't have any thoughts or boredom or fear or anything, or pain or pleasure. We won't have anything, but it won't be traumatic, because we won't feel any trauma, just as we didn't before we were born, did we? Did we feel millennia of trauma before we were born? No, we did not. So there's no need to worry about that. It's fine. And kind of old age kind of helps prepare one for death, if one is lucky enough to live to old age. Because your body starts to, become less good at what it does or what it did. You can't give birth anymore. I just wanted to demonstrate like the concept of a body and its reproductive organs and facilities. Now, imagine this egg box is the female body. In it we have, lo and behold, can you see that? An egg. There's only one left in this box, but of course, like women are born with many eggs, and I think they remain, don't they, after fertility ends. But that egg gets fertilized by. Well, I was going to compare the female body to another egg box, which you can imagine as a male body, and I don't know if you can see this, but I've put sesame seeds in it to symbolise the male seed, which, funnily enough, those sesame seeds came from this piece of bread, which actually may as well symbolise how a male reproduces. The seeds in this phallic-like object of bread fertilise the egg, and then you get you. Isn't that nice? That's the facts of life, in case anyone needed that. And then you become a baby, don't you? And then you haven't got a great deal of consciousness at that point. You've got some, but not as much as we have when we grow to adulthood. And a baby cannot typically remember, consciously anyway, what the first 6 or 7 years of life, or not much of it anyway, as it grows into a toddler and a young child. I can't remember much about the first few years of my life, but it was made worse by the fact that I was half blind, basically, until they discovered that I was half blind and gave me glasses at the age of about 6 or 7, which wasn't a good start in life, but I didn't know. Like a blind person, if nobody told them they was blind, would know that there was anything wrong until they told me that there was. Right, and just here's another life form. I should have shown you this before. Inferior, you might say, to humans. Yes, no, maybe, because if it wasn't for bacteria and stuff, we wouldn't be able to be us, because many bacteria are good as well as bad, and they work in our guts, for instance, and in our bodies. And we've got loads of bacteria all over our bodies, including millions on our tongues. Ugh. Yuck. So, anything else? So death. When you die, I've explained what happens. I don't think you go anywhere afterwards. I don't think eternal life would be great, or even prolong life to 200 years on this earth or whatever, because I think the longer you were alive, the more boring it would get. What would pleasure consist of? I mean, people go on about heaven. Oh, it'd be nice to live in heaven, but would it? Because it's like exciting when you go to a new school or a new job for 5 minutes, or you find a new partner. But once you're in heaven, it's what it is, isn't it? It's just like work, or maybe maybe you don't even have a job. You just sit around playing the harp and listening to hymns or whatever. That doesn't sound great to me, especially if it's everlasting. I wonder if you're allowed to commit suicide up there. Or you might go to hell. That might be slightly better. It'd be warmer anyway, especially in these days of the cost of heating. At least it's free in hell. That's not too bad. And you'd get used to the torture as well, wouldn't you? Because if it doesn't kill you off, fine. It's like whatever, the torture of hunger, or the torture of banging your head against a wall occasionally or whatever. It won't kill you. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, whatever that means. So the aim of life, anyway, I was going to go on to, should be to, pleasure. Well, you might say pleasure, but pleasure cannot be infinite or long-lasting, as I've just explained, because heaven would be boring after a while if it was only pleasure. It'd be more interesting if there was some shit going on up there as well, I think. So to provide contrast between pleasure, neutrality, and pain. If you don't have the contrast, you can't have pleasure. Surely it's all normality then. So the same would apply to life. Just aim for overall sort of stability, security. And I would say, just try to do what you want if you want to achieve happiness. Don't do what anyone else tells you, except in work, of course. Or of course, you must do what your partner tells you. Of course, that goes without saying. But, otherwise, just do what you want. That's your best chance. And I think that's more or less it. Yes, I just wanted to say about the idea of death and passing, because you can't say somebody died, you have to say they passed now. You used to say they passed on or passed away, now it's past. They passed, and they're with the angels. Well, I'm sorry, but forget that. What is the mechanism for moving on to another dimension? Where is this dimension? Is it in the sky? That's what people used to think, or below the ground if you go to hell. Well, how do you get there? Do you get the ambulance takes your corpse to the mortuary. It doesn't take it to heaven or hell, does it? So, and we haven't got a soul because it's just nonsense. There is no soul. It's not a thing. It's not an organ. People used to think it was or whatever, but it's not. So your body, and the other weird concept is the resurrection of the dead at the final day of judgment, when bodies that may have been cremated or destroyed in an atom bomb or whatever, or may have been alive 10,000 years ago or whatever, are suddenly brought back together. They come out of their graves, or their ashes come out of their urn, and they go and meet the Lord or whatever. Well, anyway, I just don't understand how that would happen. Anyway, like I say, it's not the idea of eternal life. I nearly put my elbow on the table but missed. The idea of eternal life is quite a boring one to me. Anyway, I'd rather have just nothingness, because it's just chilling out forever. What's wrong with that? You're not, at least you're not going to ever have cut yourself and hurt and bleed or have mental trauma. So that's all right. It's good. You should appreciate it. Life isn't about necessarily here for happiness. It's here to reproduce, as I said at the start. So with all those thoughts in mind, I am now going to bring it to a close. I think I've explained everything you need to know about life and death and more besides. Bye bye.